and welcome to Thinking Solo. This is episode 4, and we're going to just call this episode Getting Started. I am your host and creator, Ryan Derousseau. I'm a fee-only financial advisor at Thinking Cap Financial, and thank you for joining me today on these conversations and guidance and words of encouragement for those who have small businesses, solo businesses out there. I really appreciate it. Today, I am talking to you as the Northeast is dealing with 20 inches of snow that landed on my front yard and many people's front yard across the Northeast. And as everyone knows, when that happens and you have children, it's chaos because you're still going to work, you're still trying to do the things that you want to do, whether you're trying to start that business or you've got that business in motion or somewhere in between, you are still trying to get moving forward in some way. And then the kids are home, they are interrupting. Meanwhile, the work continues on. And so I appreciate you joining me. If I sound a little stressed, it may be because of that. But nonetheless, this is why we do these types of businesses, to create freedom and ability to take a moment and go outside and play in the snow with the kids, or have the time to even shovel out in this case. So but this is the reason why I've worked for myself for many years. There's a big reason why, is to have that freedom. And even though the work still was piling on because I had a whole week off the week before, I was still able to manage it all. And that is the goal in the long run, being able to sort of manage whatever my sort of life looks like and still create, a good business as well. That being said, that is not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about getting started. And so this is really for those who have just started to begin their process, or those who are already going and need to take it to the next level. And we're going to talk a little bit about sort of when to get started, how to get started, and what may be holding you back. And then, of course, there'll also be a little movie talk at the end. Let's go. We're going to start with getting started. So if you are like most, you expect to grow to 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, a million over time in whatever sort of business you're thinking of. And if you're very early stages where you haven't really launched yet, your mind may be racing in terms of where that might go. And sometimes this is really good because you're essentially imagining the future that you want to build, but also it can be really demoralizing because as you're getting started, that 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 isn't there. Like, you may see the path to get there, but it isn't there. And that sort of gap between where you are now, which is essentially 0 to 100,000, can really define whether that business will ever grow to that size or ever get started. Because if you can't sort of bridge that gap and take the steps to move forward to get to that 100,000, 200,000, you'll never get there. But so many people hold back or wait because they can't immediately be there. And that's just not the way starting a business, no matter what it is, whether it's service-based or whether it's a product. It's very difficult to go from 0 to 100 right away. Most people will never experience that. And so one thing I want to talk about is just sort of the realization that your growth is going to take time. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it. It doesn't mean that it isn't a very worthwhile endeavor. It's just that you have to get through that first pain of not knowing when the income's going to come next, or getting that first client and maybe the second client is very, very slow to come on board. Or maybe you get a couple and then 4, 5, and 6 are difficult. It all depends on your situation and what you're trying to sell. But you have to realize that you have to get over that mark. And you'll never just go from 0 to 100. You have to work through that piece by piece. I was talking to someone recently who they have really hated sort of where they've gone in their career, and they have long thought about going on their own in some way, and they are very much wanting to keep the day job and try and build that on the side, but they want everything perfect in line in order to get started. And when I see that, I really hesitate to say, like, what's this business going to be, because they're so hesitant to move forward. And if they're so hesitant to move with the first step, how are they going to be when they have to move the second step, third step, fourth step, fifth step? And if you have to have your ducks in a row like that, so buttoned up, it's going to be very difficult for you to get started, because when you're doing this, it tends to be choppy. And that choppiness is what creates the uncertainty, but that choppiness is a requirement of doing business. And you're going to have to kind of push through that choppiness before you can get to the other side, because that other side does exist. It's just you have to get through that, and you'll never do that if you need everything in order and in a perfect row before you take that first step. I know in my experience, there's been many times where I thought, maybe I should do this or maybe I should do that. And what will happen is I think about it, think about it, think about it. I may even get really, really excited about it. And then when it comes to the actual execution of it, it's never really there. And it's because I lose momentum very, very early on. It wasn't until I truly had a business plan in place, and I had the skill set in place, and I knew exactly how to get my first customers. Even if I didn't know quite where they were, I was taking steps to get them. And it took, months before that first customer walked through that door, but they eventually did. And then from there, built and built and built. But that came after many times trying something, it immediately failing, and then me giving up on it. Or trying something, and it's just the wrong product, the wrong time. I'm the wrong person for it, all sorts of things. But without those attempts, I wouldn't have been able to find where I could grow and where I could build. And so I needed those in order to like teach me the lessons, but also teach me sort of what people want to buy, what people want, how they go about trusting things and that sort of thing. And so focus on what you can control in the next 1, 2, 3 steps. Don't focus on the endpoint. Don't focus on like what it's going to feel like when, you have everything under everything that you want, because the reality is once you get to that business size, you're going to have a whole host of problems that you never even contemplated. And that will come with concerns and issues and things that you have to address. And so you can really only just focus on what can you do today? What can you do tomorrow? What can you do the day after? And by taking those small steps after the course of, let's say, a month, you've now done 30 steps that have moved you forward in some way. And at some point, if that moving forward means clicking start the business, because it doesn't matter how long the business sits before you get your first sale, other than sort of like the sunk cost of operating a website or, whatever you're doing to market. But what matters is that you're hitting that start button and taking steps the next day and the next day and the next day to secure that client and or that sale or whatever you're trying to achieve in the business that you're starting. So that's really what I would do. And in fact, I would go a step further, and in your calendar, this is especially true if you're a W-2 employee, but also if you're not, put in time on the calendar, block it off and say, this is what I'm going to do today. This is the step I'm going to take, and this is the time that I'm going to do it, and use that time for that. And if you're able to finish the task in that time, great. If you need another day, well, now you already know what your task is for the next day. And just set aside that specific time every day, whether it's in the evening, the morning, before work, or if you have flexibility during the day, also it can be then, it doesn't matter. But finding that spot to do it will help you tremendously. For those who have already started and have already gotten through the hardest part, because truly the hardest part is getting that first client, that second client, that third client. It's really not until you get much larger, where the complexity may get beyond what it was like in those first few weeks and first few months, and you probably won't have the the psychological stress that may result from as you begin the business. And so if you have gotten to that point where you're like, okay, I've I've seen that this business can work, and I can see where I need to go in order to make this a little bit larger. Now it's trying to figure out where you can find the resources to do it. So when you are starting out, if there is anything you can do in order to cut back expenses, if you don't have this is especially true if you don't have a full-time job, but even if you have a full-time job as you're beginning, if you can cut back expenses and pay yourself less from the business at the beginning, that's going to be huge for your investment long term. If and that will allow you to invest in whatever that second level of growth may be, because that second level of growth doesn't just require time, it may require some investment of some sort. And if you can reduce what is needed, whether it's from the paycheck or from the business that's coming in, and start putting that towards it, you can start to move that forward a little quicker. In a future episode, I will talk a little bit about budgeting and how your personal budget impacts that business and why that impacts that business. But in the meantime, going through those steps and trying to figure out sort of what that budget is and what can be cut will be huge in sort of trying to find that investment for that second stage of growth, especially if you have to invest in like marketing tools or things like that to really get the size of people coming in. I hope that helps, and I hope that's like a word of encouragement for those who are hesitating to get off and getting started on those first few steps, because I really the just saying I'm going to do this and get moving forward is going to be so key, and it's the hardest part of the process. And if you can get past that and get those first few steps going, you'll find whether the business is going to work or not, but also where your drive and inner ability to fight through this is going to help, and that's going to help whether this business is the one that grows or the next business or the next or the next. Now, for this part of the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the fun stuff, which is the movies. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about Predator Badlands. This is an action movie that came out in 2025. Many people probably saw this in the theater. I'm late to the game. It's now available on Hulu, I believe, and it's from director Dan Trachtenberg, who essentially revived the Predator series, because basically no one wanted to see a Predator movie. He came around, created the movie Prey, was the director of that, and that did an amazing thing for the franchise, essentially revived it, and then has released a made-for-Hulu movie, but as well now a feature-length film for the theaters and now on Hulu, Predator Badlands. And if you haven't seen it, you can kind of imagine it's obviously about the predator, but it's really from the perspective of the predator, and this is really for the first time that was the case that I know of, anyways. And it really shows the culture and the world that leads to this predator to seek out and go and find prey to hunt. But there is a beautiful sort of connection with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners, in that he has an incredible drive. He's laser focused on seeking out the thing that he needs to bring back in order to be part of his tribe. And that focus and drive is certainly something that you have probably heard many people espouse and say, like, you need in order to start a business. You need that focus, you need that drive, you need that. But what's really beautiful about this film, beyond just sort of the actions and the world building in this space, is that he begins to learn that it's also about the family that he's building around him. And sometimes that part is forgotten as we seek out and build the business that we want to create, because we forget about those who are surrounding us, or we're so hyper focused on the business that we forget, our child's baseball game, or we forget that we need to be there at 6 o'clock to pick them up or something like that. And the more that you're able to put that into perspective, I feel is an important lesson, because we're not trying to build this business so we have the most amount of money at the end of our life. What we're trying to do is build this business for us and the family around us, to help support them and help support us. And the more that you can keep that in focus, the better off that success will be. And that success may look very different from when you started out. And it was a lesson within the Predator Badlands, and a very cool feature of the film. Not to mention, it's just a very good action movie. And I'm sometimes, I can be a bit of a movie snob, and so I mean, I'm not going to every MCU movie or anything like that. But this is a really fantastic action movie worth checking out. So if you haven't seen it, I would strongly encourage. Um, but that's it for today. Again, you can find me on YouTube at Thinking Solo. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Ryan Derousseau. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll speak to you next time. In the next session, we will have an interview. I believe it is Elaine Pofelt, writer and someone who works and talks to solo entrepreneurs almost on a daily basis. So make sure to check that out. In the meantime, I'll talk to you soon, and keep grinding.